I'd been crushing on Ethan for 12 years, watching him go through girlfriends like tissues. Just when everyone thought I might actually tame the heartbreaker, he blocked me for another girl. A month later, he was down on one knee in a field of roses, begging for another chance. I pulled a bright red wedding invitation from my purse, smiled, and said, "I'm getting married next week. I hope you can make it." Ethan texted our group chat. "Meet at the usual spot tonight, got something to announce." His best friend Josh teased, "Whoa, so formal. Is the player finally settling down?" It was a running joke, and usually Ethan would laugh it off. This time he just replied, "Yeah." One simple word, but it sent ripples through the group. The chat exploded. "No way. Mr. Heartbreaker is tying the knot. Did Olivia finally land him? Let me guess. Ethan hasn't been dating anyone recently, so it must be Olivia. I always said he was different with her. He never brought girls around before she moved back." My feelings for Ethan were no secret, just like his obvious favoritism towards me. He didn't reply, seemingly confirming everyone's assumptions. After all these years, despite his revolving door of girlfriends, I'd always been his constant. Anyone would think my wait was finally over. Ethan was the last to arrive, with a shy girl trailing behind him. Her small hand gripped his shirt, her wide eyes darting around the room with innocent curiosity. She looked like a fawn straying into unfamiliar territory, reminding me of myself 12 years ago when I first moved in with the Millers. The playful banter in the room died down as Ethan pulled her forward and put his arm around her. "Everyone, this is my girlfriend, Summer." His eyes never left her, full of tenderness. Sensing the awkward silence, Summer shrunk closer to him, looking nervous. Josh was the first to recover, letting out a forced laugh. "Keeping secrets, huh? When did this happen?" His gaze kept flicking to me, concern masked but easily readable after all these years. Ethan had never formally introduced a girlfriend to us before. We all knew what this meant. He ruffled Summer's hair. "A couple of months now. Summer's a bit shy, so be nice." 12 years ago, it was the same group, the same words. "Olivia's a bit shy, so be nice." Back then, I was a small-town girl fresh off the bus, awkward and self-conscious in my new, affluent surroundings. Ethan had been the one to pull me into their circle. That year I was 14 and he became my light. Maybe the others were closer to Ethan, but I'd always been the only girl in the group, the one everyone assumed would end up with him. To avoid making me uncomfortable, their reactions were subdued. Summer bit her lip, eyes welling up. "Ethan," she whispered. "Do they not like me?" Her use of his first name made me cringe. Teenage Ethan used to tease me relentlessly, stealing my hair ties and making me call him Big Brother, before he'd give them back. Before he had grown out of his boyish charm, he used to hate girls who acted cutesy. Just as Ethan was about to comfort her, a glass shattered in the corner. It was Ashton, the one person who'd always had it out for me. His face was hard. "Ethan, what the hell have you been doing to Olivia all these years?" Ethan's face darkened. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on me. "I don't know what you're all assuming, but Olivia has always been like a sister to me." Like a sister? Did he forget last New Year's Eve when Josh bought fireworks and asked him to join? Ethan had just lounged beside me, grinning. "Nah, I'm staying with my Olivia." Someone had teased. "Since when is she your Olivia?" He'd tossed a clementine at them, laughing. "Always has been. She's practically my childhood sweetheart. Just 6 months ago, and now I was a sister." I pressed a hand to my chest. There was a pang, a dull ache, but nowhere near as devastating as I'd expected. Instead, there was a sense of closure, like finally receiving a rejection letter from a literary magazine 12 years after submitting a story I'd poured my heart into. It was a calm acceptance. "Oh, okay. I see." The years of waiting had worn down the initial excitement and hope. My feelings for Ethan were the same. Not gone, just dormant. The outcome no longer held the same power over me. Ashton started to say something else, but I stopped him. He glared at me and muttered, "Useless," before storming out. I couldn't stay. Grabbing my bag, I followed him. Just as I reached the door, Ethan called out, "Olivia, get back here." I turned and smiled. "It's okay, Ethan. Have fun. I'll check on Ashton." It was the first time I'd willingly called him Ethan. He didn't look pleased. His face hardened. "Get back here." This time I didn't listen. As I pushed the door open, I heard the crash of more breaking glass. The door closed behind me, shutting out the noise. Checking on Ashton was just an excuse. Despite him sticking up for me, I still remembered how he treated me in school, pelting me with dodgeballs, snipping my braids, hiding my textbooks, putting caterpillars in my desk. Gratitude was one thing. I'd send him a thank you gift. But becoming friends? No way. I was heading home when I spotted him leaning against the wall outside, smoking. He tossed the cigarette in the trash when he saw me. I rode with Josh. "Are you heading back? Mind if I get a ride?" I sighed and relented. In 12 years of friendship, this was one of the few times we'd been alone without arguing. I dropped him off at his house. He didn't move. After a long silence, he mumbled, "That Summer girl, She's a lot like you used to be. So what? She wasn't me, and I wasn't her. I didn't want to discuss it, so I opened the car door, practically shoving him out. Ignoring his indignant shouts, I pulled away and turned into the next driveway. My house was next door to Ashton's, Ethan's right beside that. This was a neighborhood of privilege. Ashton called as soon as I parked, telling me to check the group chat. It was blowing up with red envelopes, virtual cash gifts. Ethan had added Summer to the group, and everyone was sending her welcome gifts. I sent one too. The next second, Ethan kicked me out of the chat. A private message followed. Sorry Olivia, your presence makes Summer uncomfortable. Let's not contact each other for a while. My fingers trembled as I typed back a simple okay. The message bounced back with a glaring red exclamation point. He'd blocked me. 12 years of friendship, from childhood to adulthood, lost to a 2-month fling. I stared at the exclamation point, eyes stinging but dry. The old Ethan would pat my head and say, Olivia, nobody's more important to me than my parents and you. I loved Ethan, but I'd never crossed a line, never even hinted at my feelings. Whenever he had a girlfriend, I deliberately kept my distance, afraid of being a burden. Yet, any attempt to pull away only seemed to annoy him. His first girlfriend was my college roommate, a girl who knew exactly how I felt about him. They showed up hand in hand, her smile radiant. She seemed to have forgotten all the whispered secrets we'd shared, thanking me with saccharine sincerity. Olivia, thank you. I couldn't have gotten Ethan without you. The wind howled that day as I stood there, feeling like a fool. That's when it hit me. She'd befriended me solely to get to him. I distanced myself from both of them. Their romance lasted all of 3 days. She cried in our dorm room, then turned on me, eyes puffy and accusing. Ethan dumped me. Are you happy now? I was baffled. I hadn't done anything. But since she asked, I told her the truth. Yeah, I am. That night, Ethan dragged me out to a fancy dinner. Come on, Liv, he'd pleaded. You've been ignoring me for 3 days. Don't be mad. I explained, I'm not mad. You have a girlfriend, and we should keep some distance. It's better for everyone. But I only dated her because I thought you two were friends. If you like someone, I like them. If you don't, I don't. He said it with such conviction. After that, he avoided dating anyone I knew and never brought his girlfriends around. But our social circle was small. Word always got back to me. At holiday gatherings, people would tease him. Ethan, when are you going to bring a girl around for us to meet? He'd put a peeled shrimp in my bowl, answering casually, not yet. A few of his girlfriends had even contacted me, begging or berating me to stay away from him. It became clear. Even if I did nothing, my mere existence was a problem. So when Ethan asked me to cut ties with him for summer, I respected his decision. But why kick me out of the group chat? It wasn't just him. My closest friends were there too. My phone buzzed with calls. I declined them all, texting back that I was fine, telling them not to worry. Kindness was too much to bear when I was on the verge of tears. An hour later, Josh showed up at my house, sporting a bruised face. He flopped onto the couch, accepting the ice pack I offered. What happened? I asked. He sighed. Ethan pissed some people off and got jumped. I tried to break it up and got caught in the crossfire. Where are they now? I asked. He shifted the ice pack, wincing. They took Ethan to the hospital. I stayed silent. After a few minutes, Josh asked hesitantly, Olivia, Ethan's just confused. We all see how much Summer looks like. When he comes to his senses, will you give him another chance? The unspoken ending was, like you. I frowned, avoiding the question. Josh, I think I need to go visit Grandma. When my mom was pregnant with me, my dad's business almost went bankrupt. A fortune teller blamed it on me, saying I was bad luck. Since my mom was 9 months along, there wasn't much they could do. So, as soon as I was born, I was sent to live with my grandma in a small town in Georgia. She named me Olivia, her only treasure. But when I was 14, she passed away, and I was nobody's treasure anymore. I'd always thought, at least there's Ethan. Even if I wasn't a treasure, I was his first choice. And that wasn't so bad. But reality had a way of hitting hard. It was the rainy season in Georgia, the air thick with humidity. I walked along the familiar cobblestone streets, umbrella in hand. At the end of the road was the old 3-story house where I'd spent my childhood. My mom always said Grandma was stubborn. Even though her daughter had married into money, she insisted on staying in that small town, clinging to her rundown house. But that stubborn old woman had given me the happiest years of my life. The rain was light. A street vendor rode by on a tricycle, his loudspeaker looping, "Peaches, fresh Georgia peaches." A woman came out of a nearby house, umbrella up, to buy some. She spotted me and gasped, "Olivia? What are you doing here? It's not time for your grandma's memorial yet." I forced a smile, tears pricking my eyes. I missed home. Just here for a few days. She glanced at my suitcase, her expression softening. "Honey, you came all this way alone? Your grandma's house has been empty for ages. It must be damp with all this rain. Why don't you stay with us? My son Alex is hardly ever home. You keep me company. She grabbed my suitcase and led me to her house. I was given Alex's room. Mrs. Peterson's hospitality was overwhelming. After several failed attempts to refuse, I gave in when she asked, her voice tinged with hurt, if I thought their home wasn't good enough. Alex's room was clean and simple. The most prominent feature was a large bookcase filled with books, models, and trophies. Very fitting for the straight-A student he'd always been. He was 2 years older than me. We weren't close, but we weren't strangers either. Besides growing up together, we'd also gone to the same college. Him on a full scholarship, me thanks to in-state tuition. Ashton called that night. His voice sounded subdued. Josh said you went back to Georgia? I murmured. Yeah. After a long pause, he grumbled. Why didn't you tell me? I would have come with you. Ashton's feelings for me had become apparent after our awkward teenage years. I didn't hesitate to shut him down. It's okay. Focus on work. Be careful on your own. I'll wrap things up here and come get you in a few days. He hung up before I could protest. The rain stopped overnight. I was about to visit Grandma's grave when I bumped into Alex at the front door. The breeze carried the scent of damp earth and rustled his shirt. He'd grown from a lanky teenager into a handsome young man. His eyes flickered with an emotion I couldn't decipher. Long time no see, he said, his voice low and pleasant, just as I remembered. Long time no see, I echoed, smiling. Now that he was back, I couldn't impose on his family any longer. I said goodbye to Mrs. Peterson. She frowned thoughtfully. I don't feel right about you staying there alone. Tell you what, let Alex move back in with you. Before I could refuse, Alex spoke. Okay. I'll help you clean up the place later. Under Mrs. Peterson's hopeful gaze, I agreed. Even though the house had been empty, I'd paid for upkeep over the years. It just needed a good dusting. After we cleaned, I sat on the front steps, lost in thought. The rain-washed sky was a brilliant blue, dotted with fluffy white clouds, a stark contrast to the smog-filled skies of LA. Alex handed me a bottle of water. I looked up and smiled. What brings you back? He grinned. Mom tricked me. What about you? He asked. Alex was undeniably attractive. The sun warmed his skin, making him look almost golden. His glasses hid intelligent, warm eyes. I looked away, searching for the right words. Healing, I finally said. Life in the small town was slow and peaceful. I settled into a comfortable routine with Alex. He was the perfect housemate, bringing me books to read, and even finding me a puppy that looked just like Grandma's old dog. I sat on the floor, cuddling the puppy. When the tears I'd been holding back finally came, Alex stood quietly until I was done, then knelt and ruffled my hair. Been wronged, Liv? He asked gently. The familiar words unearthed a flood of memories. As a child, I'd been teased mercilessly for being fatherless. I'd hide and cry, and Alex would always find me, asking the same question. Gradually, the teasing stopped. I only learned why when I saw him cornering one of my tormentors in an alleyway, giving him a beating. I realized I'd been very attached to Alex before I left. Why had we drifted apart? A few days later, Josh sent me a video of Ethan, sprawled on the floor of a club, clutching a bottle and slurring my name. Summer stood beside him, biting her lip, eyes brimming with tears. 2 messages followed the video. Olivia, when are you coming back? Ethan's drunk and keeps asking for you. He's making a scene at Cloud 9. We can't control him. Cloud 9 was the usual spot. Ethan's family's upscale club. Ethan rarely drank, but whenever he did, I was the only one who could get him to leave quietly. I was surprised he even recognized me when he was drunk. I'd once asked him if he was ever worried about mistaking someone else for me. He just laughed and said, never. You're the one and only Olivia. It was these small gestures that fueled my 12-year crush. Hope keeps you going, doesn't it? I replied. Don't tell me about him anymore. Josh called immediately. I answered, knowing he wasn't to blame. Hey Olivia. Ethan's been really struggling. Shouting erupted in the background. Ethan, stop. Don't grab my phone. Then Ethan's voice filled my ear. Liv, when are you coming to get me? I was in the hospital the other day, and you didn't even visit. I haven't seen you in so long. His voice grew softer, almost a whimper. Liv, I miss you. I hung up without a word. That night, Summer sent me a friend request, saying she had something to show me. I wasn't interested, but she was persistent. After the 20th request, I gave in. She sent a picture of herself and Ethan in bed, her dark hair spread across the pillow. Olivia, she wrote. I know you like him, but Ethan only sees you as a sister. He told me he only loves me. He was drinking and calling for you tonight because he saw me talking to another guy. He was jealous. I don't want you to misunderstand. I read her rambling message, feeling nothing. 12 years of feelings ended the moment he kicked me out of the group chat. Falling out of love wasn't as hard as I'd imagined. Oh, I replied. I wish you both happiness. It rained for days. Alex liked to brew tea and sketch by the window. I'd curl up on the couch with a book, the puppy, Pudding, asleep at my feet. Since the day I cried in front of him, we'd grown closer. The sound of rain outside, his pen scratching against paper, the occasional rustle of pages. It was a picture of domestic tranquility. A frantic knock shattered the peace. It was Mrs. Peterson's neighbor. Alex, your mom just collapsed. Come quick. Alex froze, then bolted out the door. I followed close behind. Mrs. Peterson had always been kind to us, especially after Grandma died. She'd been bringing us homemade food almost every day. She was lying in bed, looking strangely peaceful. Alex rushed to her side. Mom, are you okay? Should we go to the hospital? She glanced at me then sighed. I wasn't going to tell you. She fumbled under her pillow and handed Alex a piece of paper. I don't have much time left. My biggest wish is to see you married before I go. The paper was a medical report, terminal cancer. Alex's face crumpled. After a long silence, he said, it could be a misdiagnosis. We'll get a second opinion. Despite his words, Alex grew quieter each day. He started hiding to smoke. I'd find him the same way he used to find me crying as a kid. I'd never seen him smoke before. It broke my heart. One evening, I found him on the back porch, staring out at the rain. Liv, he said quietly. Would you marry me? The rain on the corrugated metal roof of the back porch was a steady rhythmic thrumming, a heavy gray curtain that shut out the rest of the world. Alex stood in the shadow of the doorway, his gray eyes behind his wire-rimmed spectacles holding a quiet, intense vulnerability. He wasn't wearing his usual crisp linen shirt. He wore a faded navy cotton one, the sleeves rolled up to his forearms, smelling faintly of dried lavender and the clean, cold rain. Liv, he said again, his voice dropping to a low, warm register that seemed to vibrate against my chest. Would you marry me? I stared at him, my fingers tightening around my tea mug. For 12 years, my entire universe had been governed by the gravity of Ethan Miller. I had spent my youth, my patience, and my quiet, unrequited devotion, waiting for him to look at me, not as a sister, not as a comfortable habit, but as the only woman in his world. I had tolerated his revolving door of girlfriends, his playful handpats, and his public rejections, believing that my resilience was the price of his love. But standing on the wet wooden deck of my grandmother's old house, looking at the boy who had once taken a beating in a dark alleyway just to keep my name from being whispered in the dirt, the illusion of my past finally crumbled. I didn't need to be Ethan's first choice. I was already Alex's only choice. Yes, I whispered. The word was small, almost lost in the steady roar of the rain, but Alex heard it. His shoulders, which had been tense and hunched, slowly relaxed. He took a step forward, his long fingers reaching out to gently cup my face. His palm was warm, dry, and smelled of the Georgia peaches Mrs. Peterson had left on our counter. I won't let you regret this, Liv, he murmured, his thumb gently brushing a stray tear from my cheek. I've been waiting for you to look at me since I was 16. I closed my eyes, letting the quiet warmth of his hand wash over me. For the first time in my life, my chest did not feel tight. The cold, heavy pressure that had kept me awake for countless nights in LA had vanished, replaced by a deep, permanent stillness. The next morning, the rain had cleared, leaving the sky over our small town a brilliant, clean shade of blue. Mrs. Peterson's doctor called Alex's phone at 9. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the puppy pudding biting playfully at the hem of my jeans. Alex's hand froze as he pressed the speaker button, his gray eyes dark with apprehension. Mr. Peterson, the doctor's voice came through, sounding slightly embarrassed. I am writing to apologize for the extreme negligence of our laboratory department yesterday. The biopsy report we handed your mother. There was a clerical error. The patient's name was Sarah Peterson, an 80-year-old resident of the southern county. Your mother's scan was completely clear. It was just a benign fluid-filled cyst on her liver. The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Alex slowly turned his head to look at his mother, who was sitting on the sofa, her hand still holding her terminal medical file. Mrs. Peterson's face didn't pale. In fact, she let out a loud, robust laugh, her cheeks rosy under the morning sun. A clerical error. I knew my liver was too strong to go out like that. I've been eating organic peaches for 40 years. Mom. Alex stood up, his voice rising in exasperation. You knew? Why didn't you check the name on the report? Why should I have checked? Mrs. Peterson sniffled, her eyes darting to me with a smug, satisfied warmth. If I had checked, would you have asked my sweet Olivia to marry you last night? No. You would have kept smoking on the porch, like a lonely ghost. A mother has to do what she must, Alex. She walked over, grabbed my hands, and pulled me into a tight maternal hug. My beautiful Olivia, she wept, her tears soaking into my collar. You are finally my daughter. Your grandma. She's looking down from the heavens right now and she's smiling. I looked at her, and then at Alex, who was rubbing his temples with a look of Helpless, affectionate defeat. A soft, genuine smile finally broke through my face. It's okay, Mrs. Peterson, I said. I'm glad you're healthy. Of course I am, she beamed. Now let's go to the town chapel. The priest needs to reserve the date for next Saturday. We don't want the other families stealing our slot. While we were organizing our small, rustic wedding in Georgia, the high society circle of LA was undergoing a silent, violent storm. Ethan had spent 3 weeks trying to live his dream with Summer. Initially, he had been ecstatic. He had convinced himself that Summer was his fresh start, the girl who didn't carry the heavy 12-year weight of his history with me. He took her to his family's clubs, bought her the designer bags, and introduced her to his friends as his only choice. But the illusion of her innocence did not last long once she was brought into the light. Without my quiet, stabilizing presence, and my constant, selfless mediation of his domestic affairs, his life began to fall into chaos. Summer was insecure, demanding, and constantly threw tantrums whenever his phone buzzed, terrified that his sister would eventually come back. She had secretly used his phone to block his mutual friends, deleted his corporate emails from his assistant, and even paid a local forum moderator to post malicious lies about my academic history. When Ethan found out about the forum posts, the anger he had been suppressing for weeks finally exploded. Why did you do it, Summer? He demanded, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl as they stood in his private VIP suite at Cloud 9. Why did you dox Olivia's name? Because you love her. Summer shrieked, her fingers clawing at his sleeve, her tears falling with practiced, dramatic speed. You say she's a sister, Ethan, but you sleep with her name on your chest. You call for her in your sleep. You haven't touched me since the night of the party. Ethan froze. His hand instinctively reached for his heart. The spot where my name, Olivia, was freshly tattooed in dark, scarred ink. She's gone, Summer, he whispered, his voice sounding hollow dead. She's in Georgia. She's never coming back. Then why are you still looking at her old photos? Summer cried, throwing a glass cup against the wall. Why do you have her favorite tea in your cabinet? I'm your girlfriend. I'm the one you chose. Ethan didn't answer. He looked at her wet, angry face, her expensive silk dress, and her demanding, bright eyes. And for the first time in 12 years, he realized a terrifying thing. He didn't love her. He had never loved her. He had simply used her as a mirror to prove to himself that he was still the player, still the heartbreaker who didn't need the quiet, unyielding girl who had stood by his side since they were 14. Pack your things, Summer, Ethan said, his voice flat and entirely empty. The apartment. I've already terminated the lease. Have a safe trip back to your school. Ethan. No. You can't do this to me. He didn't wait to hear her scream. He walked out of the club, his black leather shoes kicking up the dry sleet of the parking lot, his mind filled with a sudden wild desperation. The access road to the town chapel in Georgia was quiet, the sound of the crickets chirping loudly in the warm evening air. I was walking back from the florist's shop, my arms holding a small basket of fresh white roses, my flat leather shoes making a neat, steady click-clack on the wet cobblestones of the street. Suddenly, a massive white truck pulled up to the curb near my grandmother's old house. The truck doors opened, and several delivery men began unloading massive, towering crates of red roses. Within 10 minutes, the entire front lawn of the 3-story house had been transformed into a brilliant, bleeding sea of red, thousands of custom-grown, expensive red roses that looked completely out of place in our quiet, rustic town. At the center of the field stood Ethan. He was wearing his tailored black suit, but his tie was gone, his collar damp with sweat, his dark hair messy as if he had been running through a storm. He looked pale, his slate-gray eyes bloodshot and wild, his face covered in a rough, uneven stubble. When he saw me standing by the gate, a sudden, choked sob escaped his throat. Liv, he whispered. He dropped to one knee in the middle of the roses, his hands shaking as he pulled a small, velvet-lined box from his pocket, opening it with a frantic, desperate speed. Inside was a massive, 10-carat pear-cut diamond ring, the one he had once shown me in a catalog, claiming he would only ever give it to the woman who owned his soul. I'm sorry, Liv, he wept, his face wet with tears, his voice raw. I was blind. I was a fool. I let her play me because I was so terrified of you leaving me. I thought if we stayed friends, I could keep you forever without having to grow up. But I can't live without you, Liv. I can't breathe. He held the ring toward me, his eyes filled with a desperate, pathetic hope. Look, Liv. The name is still on my chest. I'll buy a house here. I'll leave the club. Just don't look at me like a stranger. I looked at the massive diamond ring, then at his tear-stained face. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no pity, and no pain. The man who had spent 12 years treating me like a comfortable habit, the man who had let another woman wear my clothes, and the man who had kicked me out of the group chat to protect his true love, was now nothing more than a stranger. I reached into my bag and pulled out a bright red wedding invitation sealed with a neat gold wax stamp. I placed it gently in his shaking hand. "I'm getting married next week, Ethan," I said, my voice quiet, cool, and entirely steady. "I hope you can make it." The morning of the wedding arrived with a brilliant, golden clarity. The small-town chapel was filled with the scent of wild jasmine and warm, sweet tea. The guests, the simple, honest people of Georgia who had watched me grow up, were sitting in the pews, their faces glowing with a warm, genuine joy. I stood at the altar, my hand resting gently on Alex's arm. He was wearing a bespoke charcoal suit, his dark hair styled back, his eyes behind his spectacles clear, deep, and filled with a quiet, unbending devotion. He looked down at me, a soft smile touching his lips. "Are you ready, Liv?" he asked. "I'm ready, Alex," I whispered. At the very back row of the chapel, Ethan sat in the shadow of the heavy wooden pillars. He was still wearing his rumpled black suit, his hand clutching the red wedding invitation, his face pale and wet with tears as he watched us. He looked like an empty shell, his heart completely dead, realizing that the first choice he had thrown away was now someone else's greatest treasure. We exchanged our vows under the warm light of the stained glass windows, the silver rings sliding onto our fingers with a soft, clean click. "I present to you for the very first time," the priest smiled, his voice echoing in the quiet chapel, "Mr. and Mrs. Alex Peterson." The room erupted into a soft, warm applause. I turned to Alex, my arms wrapping gently around his neck as he leaned down to kiss me. My body felt incredibly light, my heart beating with a steady, quiet rhythm of 72 beats per minute. The 12 years of my past were a closed book, the red exclamation points and the toxic comments completely washed away by the clean, southern rain. I was finally here, and I was finally truly home.